Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talking League, your weekly NRL Fantasy podcast. You join us for our first ever YouTube video. It's an edition of Emerging Issues, which, of course, is usually a segment on the fantasy game plan. Jason and Brenton here will be your presenters for the fantasy game plan in 2025B. And, mate, we're in the YouTube studio for the first time. How exciting.
Yeah, not too bad. I don't know how they chose us for our faces, but we'll gladly be the faces for Talking League for the start.
Yeah, not too sure I'd say gladly, but maybe reluctantly. But no, delighted to be on YouTube, of course. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. I believe that's what we need to say on YouTube. Wouldn't know, not an expert. But in this one, for those who haven't listened to the Emerging Issues segment of the Fantasy Game Plan before, we go through essentially what is an emerging issue for NRL fantasy coaches. Throughout the season, it might be a certain player getting injured, might be bye planning, might be looping, or something that pops up in the round. We'll go through it. In this one, we're going to go through the exclusive that we revealed on Thursday on the podcast, and that, of course, was that there's been one rule change for 2025, and it's now that, unlike it says here on the screen, this is just a screen grab from the NRL Fantasy website, rounds 13, 16, and 19 are the minor bye rounds, where 3 teams are missing. Now, Brenton, in 2025, you only need a starting 13 as opposed to a full 17. I think this is going to have big ramifications for strategy. From your perspective, do you think there's a particular reason why NRL Fantasy might have gone down this path?
Not really. I don't actually even see the reason of why they have done that, because I think this is what separated the good coaches from the great coaches, is those people who are able to plan for major and minor bye rounds. But now the minor bye rounds seem a lot easier because you have to field 4 less players. So you don't technically have to trade out your origin guns, or you don't have to look at those kind of previews for it, if that makes sense. So yeah, no reason why they did it, I don't think, is to maybe just have more engagement for more trades and more players.
Yeah, I think the engagement line you put there, nailed on the head. Of course, if players are running out of trades, or they ran out of trades in, say, round 22, 23, they're not going to be clicking into the website, and that's not going to get clicks for the sponsors and everything like that. That's probably why they've done it, and I do appreciate the start of last season. For the first 5 rounds, it was absolutely brutal with injuries and suspensions. I know I was max trading till about round 8, I think. I mean, I got to round 26 and used my final trade, so obviously I managed my trades from that point forward. But maybe that's what they're looking at going. We've got coaches that are max trading all the way up to the major bye round period, and then they're getting to 20, already down to 0 after 1 or 2 rounds, and then blowing them all there and looking at it. Maybe this could be helped with that. So in this video, of course, folks, we're actually going to be exploring some of the strategic impacts that we've noticed already with certain players and certain teams. But let's just recap our buy round strategy. And for us, we really like to look at, instead of looking at where our green dots are coming from, we want to look at where our red dots are coming from in the major buys. So, of course, in rounds 12, 15, and 18, which are our majors, starting 13, that's the same on the minor buys. So you've got 8 red dots, essentially, that you can allow on your bench. And got 4 main sources: our injured and suspended players, our players not selected, origin players, so whether they be in origin camp in the major buy rounds or they're trying to back up in the minors. And then probably the big one here, of course, which changes between these two, is the amount of players that have from teams that have bye rounds. Now, of course, in the major bye rounds, we have just 5 matches being played, so only 10 teams available. Minors, we've got 14 teams available, so just basic math speed, it seems like it's going to be a lot easier in these rounds to get your starting 13 on the park.
Yeah, exactly right. Because as you said, we've had previous ones where the minor bye rounds you had to field 17, and if you've got guys who don't back up from origin or aren't a mainstay in the teams, it made it very, very difficult if you weren't properly planned. So again, this year's going to be a lot easier for those minor bye rounds, so I think it's the majors that it's going to be the higher focus.
Yeah, it certainly is. And because in these rounds we can have any players come from these 4 sources of red dots, we're probably going to have less from the teams, and it's going to be more our origin players. And let's have a look at that now, obviously. Payne Haas, Nathan Cleary, we look at those 2 as brilliant season keepers, because, of course, Broncos and Panthers have 2 major bye rounds when they don't play anyway. You think with these 2, very valuable players to their sides. Both teams will have premiership aspirations. Maybe Broncos a little bit more fanciful than the 4-time reigning premiers. But do you think this year, with the less reliance on them having to back up to field a starting 13, that we might be able to, A, start with more of them, and B, hold on to more of them during the period?
Well, I think with these minor buy rounds, I think there's going to be less focus on the planning. So therefore, you're just picking the best players, whether they play origin or not. So that's a strategy I'm going to go in with this year, is that if they are a good player and if they've got a decent run, let's say round no buys until the first origin game, I'm not going to worry about any of that kind of planning for Origin until it's closer to the time, and then work out, are they going to be a keeper? Do I think they're going to back up? Are they carrying any niggles? And then work out, do I keep them for the season or do I trade them and then potentially bring them back later?
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring there. And you mentioned there that you're going to leave it a bit later. Do you think part of that is that you think you're going to need to spend less trades during the period so you can actually afford to, say, max trade in rounds 9, 10, 11 and 12 to actually get your first phase of buy planning sorted?
Yeah, I think it will be that is an element of it, is saving the trades, because, we all pretty much knew that Payne Haas was not last year not going to be backing up. I think he actually had a niggle as well. So it broke the golden rule of trading keepers because you had to plan for these buy rounds. This year it's not as prevalent to need to do that. So these guys like Cleary's, Yo's, even Payne Haas, depending if he starts the season, if you start with him, you can probably hold them throughout the whole year.
Yeah, you definitely can, as long as they don't get hurt. And we know at the time of recording of this one that Payne Haas is having an ankle clean out. Now, an ankle clean out is less dangerous than it seems. So if you are still keen on Haas in draft or classic, I don't think there's any issues there. You'd rather him get it done now while he's in pre-season and find Nick than miss 4 rounds in the season. But with Nathan Cleary, something I did observe with the Panthers draw is they do have a buy in round 11, which is the round before the major buy-in period starts, which this year is 12 to 19 instead of 13 to 20 as it was in 2023 and 2024, is that after their match in round 10, I think they play the Cowboys from memory. They have 17 days between that match in round 10 and game 1 of Origin. So 17-day break for the Panthers players. With that, you'd think Nathan Cleary is probably more likely to back up in maybe one of 13, 16 or 19. But even without that, you don't really need him to back up because you only need to have 2 halves on the pitch.
Exactly right. And I think it's actually Nathan Cleary, he's going to be the most owned player, or you would think, apart from maybe like a Sandon Smith this year or a Connor Watson or someone like that. But, Terrell May as well. But I think it's also got a bit of implication for Isaiah Yeo, who was the best averaging player in the game last year, and not playing 80 minutes in Origin now. So there's more likelihood for him to back up. And then you've still got your gun captaincy option as well.
Yeah, so, that's just something to think about. If you are looking to bin the chin this year, it might be a very, very dangerous year to do it when he's not only not $1 million being 880k, but the fact that, again, not as reliant on him backing up, you can afford to hold him. And that leads us into actually having a look at the minor buy rounds, because these are the teams that are probably going to be impacted the most. So let's bring that up now. So round 13, it's the Bulldogs, the Dolphins, and the Sharks that have that minor buy round off. 16, it's the Bulldogs, Dragons, and Sea Eagles. And then 19, it is the Rabbitohs, Raiders, and the Sea Eagles that are all missing that one as well. So plenty to go through. We're going to go through it team by team, B. Now, we're actually going to start with a team that doesn't actually miss one of the minor buy rounds. And that, of course, is the Sydney Roosters. They got buys in 10, 14, and 17. Now, before this rule came in, we're looking at this team from round 10 and going, this team is going to be awesome. They have 2 standalone buys, play every major, every minor. But do you think now that those minor buys are easy to deal with, that these 2 standalone buys for the Roosters might actually be quite problematic?
I don't think so. I do think there's a lot of good options for the Roosters. And as we said at the start, it's not now, you don't have to plan as much. So it's about getting either the best cash cows you can, which might be the Roosters centres that come through. Connor Watson seems a bit underpriced. And just getting those scores, making that cash, and then dealing with it on the rounds that they actually have the buy, if they're time to sell or not. Like, they've got Angus Crichton as well if you're wanting a gun edge. So I don't actually see this as being problematic. It's just a matter of, do the Roosters fire as a football team?
Yeah. So with those standalone buys, do we want a maximum amount of Roosters in 14 and 17, given the fact that most Origin players will be available?
I think it goes to the rule of thumb that we kind of had last year, even with the major and minor buy rounds being a bit different, is you don't want any more than probably 2 or 3, because then it just starts getting a little bit too tricky to field a team if you get like an injury plus a suspension the round before or something like that. So my general idea would be, only by that time as well, only having 2 per team.
Yeah, because that way you can save trades if there's another red dot, still have a good 17, and saving trades will be huge this year. Moving to your doggies, buys in 6, 13 and 19. So, of course, as we mentioned before, those 2 buys later in the season. They're minor buys, so they're going to be very easy to deal with. So I think you can go for players from round one. Obviously, you'll cover it in the Bulldogs pod as to how much value is there. But let's just say someone was dead keen on Matt Burton and they didn't think he was going to play Origin. This rule change is absolutely perfect for him.
100%, and he's obviously, Matt Burton is a player with upside as well, because obviously he started the season last year partnering Drew Hutchison, not averaging the greatest, but then his average skyrocketed when Toby Sexton came in. So I think he is a very, very good option, and they've got a pretty easy draw. They've also got the least amount of travel, I believe, out of all 17 teams. So if there's Bulldogs players that you love, I wouldn't be against going them.
It's essentially what you're saying there, mate, with the lack of travel, that the league's got it in for the Bulldogs and that they want them to win their premiership this year.
He's hoping.
Can take from that. He's hoping. Well, team that obviously got their wishes from the NRL this year because they're missing Magic Round is the Manly Warringah Seagulls. The buys in 9, 16 and 19, so very, very similar to the Bulldogs, just that one standalone before Origin, and then there's 2 minors. So there's probably not a heap of guys we're going for early, but maybe some value emerges midway through the season if Turbo gets injured or something. But if someone's dead keen on Ruben Garrick and they see that value there, this is a great buy schedule for him because that first buy is relatively late before Origin, and then 16 and 19, his absence is going to be easily covered.
Yeah, and I think from Manly's perspective, I think Ruben Garrick is one of the only buys from round one. Dual position, I feel like a little bit underpriced, kicks goals, can do it all in the centres, can potentially go back to the fullback position if Turbo gets injured, but they showed last year that Cooler can do that as well. So, yeah, you can look at it, but again, you're only looking at it once there might be a decline in players, like if Daly Cherry Evans has a bit of a down year or doesn't get picked for Origin for whatever reason.
Yeah, Amoli as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, going to be very easy to cover those, though, if you do have a Manly cash cow that pops up. And that's the other thing with the Bulldogs and Manly proven spoken about thus far. If a cash cow pops up on near before their first buy, you probably just take them because, obviously they'll miss that round, but after that, they've got a long runway, and if they're unavailable in 13-16 for the Bulldogs or 16-19 for the Seagulls, it shouldn't hurt you too much.
Yeah, exactly right. It's just a matter of being opportunistic of when those cash cows become available and for how long those cash cows will be going on their stretch.
Absolutely. Move to the next team that has a little bit of an impact from this, and that is the Dolphins. And buys in 13, 18 and 21. So first 12 rounds, they're available. So first major buy round, they will be there available for you. 13, they'll be out. 18 is the final major, and then 21 is a standalone. So this obviously very, very good runway for Tommy Gilbert leading up to Origin. I mean, if he makes the Origin team, it's because he's probably played well and probably scored well, so you made your money, happy days. But good runway here for Kulikefu Funifuyaki, but maybe another one that we want to keep an eye on. Obviously, Herbie Farnworth is someone we sort of spoke about midway through last season, maybe try and time the market on it. We didn't do that with him, we missed him, but those kinds of assets, maybe in round 6 or 7, we start to have a look at those and go, well, they'll be good for the major buy in around 12. 13 is not going to be a punish, and then outside of 18, they're available for the rest of that major buy-in period.
Yeah, exactly right. And this is where it's going to help with conserving trades on these minor buy rounds, because you can start reevaluating on the round 18 buy because you've got extra trades in case you need to get rid of them because they're only going to play 2 of the next 4 weeks.
Yes, and that's the thing that, stacking these up and combining them is going to be, part of that matrix of, saving trades because you're going to need them at the back end of the season with the way we're seeing things heading. Next one, Cronulla Sharks. It's a team that we're covering for the season preview, Brenton. So buys in 13, 18, 25. This is quite great because, again, much the same as the Dolphins, available at first 12 rounds, including that first major buy. 18 shouldn't be that hard to deal with. 25's deep in the season. So if we do get a bit of confidence around, say, a Nico Hines, or we see a cash cow emerge from this side, we can be fairly comfortable taking them, at any point before round 13, knowing that they're going to have awesome availability.
Yeah, that's it. And we'll cover it obviously in the Sharks podcast as well, but it's a matter of if you absolutely love that player and you need to go them for round 1. But yeah, from a buy planning perspective, these guys are pretty red hot.
Yeah, it's probably going to be the Britton Nickera when he drops to 605k in round 6, where you go, have I got the budget to try and grab him? And if you do, you probably just go, I'm going to back him to average 50 for the season. He's averaging under 50 at this point. He'll give me a 52, 53 for the rest of the season. It will be a bit of a roller coaster, but a lot of the time when it comes to fantasy, sometimes the roller coaster is enjoyable than just that flat line 50 every week.
Yeah, 100%. But that's why we play fantasy, isn't it? It's the roller coaster. If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yes, and everyone would all equal first. Team that didn't go anywhere near first last year, my South Sydney Rabbitohs. So they missed 12, they missed 19, they missed 26. So basically the same bye schedule they had in 2023 when it was 13, 20, and 26. So 13 is the same as 12, 19 is the same as 20. Again, some really good runway here for those potential mid-rangers, the Davy Moalis, the Tallis Duncan if he gets a starting edge. We've got these cash cows and Munro and Tass probably on the outside backs. But I think this is awesome for Latrell Mitchell personally. We look at round 12. If he's playing his best footy, he's probably playing Origin, so he'd miss that round anyway. Round 13, being a minor bow round, if he doesn't back up, that's fine. You can deal with that. Obviously, 16, he'd miss. 16 if he doesn't back up, again, same thing. 19, they don't play anyway. So for those that are keen on Trell, I think this is, again, good encouragement for them, knowing that they should be able to have him as a season keeper as long as he stays fit.
Yeah, the only thing that puts me off Latrell is that round 26 bye. Because if a lot of people are running out of trades by then, and if we know he's privy to a suspension every now and again. So that scares me a little bit. But from a buy planning perspective, even like a Cam Murray, when he's back, if you obviously would have cashed out Mamazoulis by then, etc. Keon Kolomatangi maybe. As long as you've got trades to then potentially get those guys out for other keepers to get bigger scores in those late rounds, then happy days.
Absolutely. Yeah, obviously Trolls priced at basically a 60 point. So, again, just be careful there. Canberra Raiders, another team I'll be covering in this pre-season. Buys in 15, 19 and 24. So, again, major buy round, they misses that first one there, the second one, round 15. Then they've got 19, which is the final minor buy. So, again, 15 might be somewhat difficult, but we don't know because we need to see how the season plays out. But awesome early availability for guys here. If you're keen on a Jamal Fogarty, if you're keen on a Zach Hosking, or even if you want to take a risk on a Corey Horsburgh, which I like the look of, this is awesome availability for them.
Yeah, I really like this. It kind of goes off what I just said before on the Rabbitohs with that later buy being 24. But what I do like is that first round through to round 14 with nothing. So if you've got a proven gun who you can potentially get, maybe a Tarpany even, if you wanted to go a bit more budget over like a Payne Haas and Isaiah Yeo, then there's a lot of value in this, and where you don't also have to really do too much planning. It's just a matter of being strategic as to when you sell your players. Yes,
and that's where Tarpany might be the reverse of last year because they got rid of their buys relatively. I think they missed 19 was their last one, but they got 10 and 14 were their first two. So after that point, I bought Tarpany in 15 and absolutely loved it. The year before I owned him the entire season. But yeah, you make a really good point there that if you hold him till... You could probably season-long keeper him, really. Obviously, 24 might be difficult, but if you've never used a trade on him, you can probably just cop a red dot in that round if you're planning to hold him for the whole season. Moving on to the next team that we're going to have a look at that's had a bit of an impact to this, the Dragons. So they've got a buy in round 3, nice and early for them. 12 is that first major buy round, but their second minor buy round in 16, that's the big one now where it's not going to be too impactful if you have a Dragon or two. And essentially from this point, B, you can look at it and go, outside of that availability in round 12, once they get through round 3, their availability pretty much is as good as any team in the competition when it comes to fantasy players.
Yeah, looking at their roster, I'm actually not really keen on any Dragons at the moment until we see a little bit more of what they do, what the roles are. If Holmes goal kicking, is Gutherson going to be a revelation, whatever. So what I like this for the reversal is that if we find some established guns, like when we had Jack de Ballin a couple of years ago, right now, after round 3, if you find that gun who's a little bit underpriced, then they're potentially season-long keepers because you've got that first buy round out of the way.
Yeah, that's it. It's basically their only standalone, and 16 should be a relatively easy one to deal with because, again, we'll kind of know who the guns are. And, even someone like a Luciano Leilua, if he looks like he's going to average 50 and you want to dive into him at round 6 or 7 because you think he'll keep that scoring up, or, like you said there, Gutherson, even a Val Holmes, Probably the big one, though, is that hooker conundrum. We know that there's Little and Cook there now at the Dragons, so they'll probably share maybe 105 minutes between them at the start. It seems like it might be Cook for 60, maybe Little for 45, or some combination of that where Cook might play a bit of 13 as well. If one of those players goes down after both their prices have dropped, one of those guys will end up being an auto buy in round 7 or 8.
Yeah, this goes back to our last year adage of depreciating assets, is that always look for the guys who are really declining. And I think that's going to be like a Jacob Little this year. So all you need is an injury for Cook. He needs to be out for 6 weeks. And then you're getting Little at like 400 grand as opposed to 600 grand. And you know what you're going to get out of him. So, something to look out for.
Certainly is. But otherwise, Dragons for the spoon. I'm sure Corby will watch this. If he doesn't, well,
he'll agree.
Anyway. Well, I thought he said he smelled a premiership. And then I did have to remind him that COVID symptoms, one of them is a lack of smell. So I think they'll probably finish below South this year, which actually might be a bit of an effort. But lastly, B, obviously, I mentioned this when the draw came out. These two teams are obviously primo for our bye planning. So Cowboys only miss round 12, so their first major, and I think it's round 7 is their first one. So again, once they get to that point, it's round 27 for their last one. So they'll be great in that period if Scotty Drinkwater is fit and firing. And the Knights are the other one as well. They've got that early bye in round 4. And then in the major bye period, they only miss 18. So again, if there was teams that you were going to go aggressively into and have multiple players from these teams, these are probably the two safest teams to do that with.
Yeah, and I really like the look of Scott Drinkwater for it because, as we were saying before we came on air, I think wing fullback's one of the harder ones to fill this year for Guns to know what you're going to get or for upside. So I really like the look of Scotty Drinkwater, especially if he picks up the goal kicking. I really like him. And then Kalen Ponga as well, obviously, but he will most likely be at Origin, so there will be extra buy rounds that you got to cover for him.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so Scotty Drinkwater's probably the one to watch. I think you can pick him from the start if you want. Otherwise, just wait till there's a little dip in price. Quite typical. Just time the market on him and in you go. Season-long keeper there. But before we get out of here, B, of course, there's probably some key takeaways I want to give our viewers instead of our listeners for what we've discussed today. Obviously, we've spoken about the impact of the change to the rules and how it might affect teams, but I think the key thing that we've also spoken about is you're probably going to save trades in the minor buy round period, which means that most coaches can now afford to spend more trades at the start of the season. So I think this year is going to be really important. If you make a mistake with a player, whether you just get their role wrong or your predictions wrong, that you get in early and correct that mistake.
Yeah, 100%. There's no use dwelling on it or saying, "Oh, mate, I might just give it another week." Like the first 6 rounds is so important because especially this year with that buy planning, there's going to be no real big chance to catch up in the minor buy rounds. So right now you need to correct the mistakes early before you miss the boat. Like last year I got on Kale Iro 50 grand too late than compared to everyone else. So therefore it sets you back 50 grand on everyone else. You miss out on 3 or 4 of those opportunities. All of a sudden you're 200 grand behind and you don't have the team value to actually play catch up. So yeah, don't be scared to make the correct the mistakes and be happy to admit them as well, because no one's an expert on this. You can just make an educated decision, and then if injury strikes, just bang, fix it, and on you go.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have crystal balls. We don't know who's going to get injured, who's going to get suspended, but what we do know, it's very important. Inaction often leads to poor results in NRL Fantasy in terms of not getting that rank that you were looking for. The next one as well is, obviously we talk about availability teams, and the Cowboys and Knights was a great example there where they only miss 1 round each. You still do need to focus on value and quality scoring from the players that you're bringing in. Obviously, a player at the Cowboys might have an awesome buy schedule, like let's just pick, Viliami Vailea, awesome buy schedule because he only misses 1 round, but you could have a guy that misses 2 or 3 rounds during that period that scores an awful lot more points that might be underpriced for whatever reason, and it's going to be a better option for you despite not playing as many matches.
Yeah, I think this is a trap that a lot of seasoned coaches can fall into as well now, is over-planning these buy schedules. I am a victim of it last year. So the year before in 2023, that was the best year I've had comfortably. I didn't start buy planning until round 9. With it coming into round 13, we had the extra trades to do each week. So that helped me quickly fix a couple of glaring mistakes that I had made. But the mistakes that I had made weren't really mistakes because they were players who were scoring really, really well, who got me into that kind of higher price point. So Yeah, I think you nail it on the head there. Focus on the value, focus on making the money, and then you work out the buy schedule just a little bit later.
Yeah, and I think as well when it comes to old school buy planning, the rationale was always do your filling of your numbers at the bottom of your roster in those cheaper price points, so get those cash downs, those speculative picks, as opposed to rotating out your expensive players, which, as we've discussed this year now with the minor buy rounds only requiring starting 13, you should be able to hold on to the Yos, the Haases, the Clearys, those types of players that, Latrell Mitchells as well, that might miss extra games due to not backing up. So the other thing as well that we want to point out is you can have too much of a good thing. So a great case in point here would be the Sydney Roosters this upcoming season. Now, we're not saying don't pick 6 Roosters at round 1. Like, go for it. If you think there's 6 players there that are awesome, go for it. Their first buy is obviously quite late, so you can afford to trade a few of them out. But what we're saying is when you get to the major buy-in period, obviously they play every major and every minor, but you don't want 3, 4, 5 of them be, because otherwise when it comes to 14, 17, you're burning some precious trades to get a full side on the park.
Yeah, correct. And this goes with the theory that we've always kind of had, is that when it comes time for the buy rounds, you want to have probably a maximum of 3 players per team. Now, it's probably a little bit easier for the minor buy round teams this year because there's less teams who are having a buy there, and you're not having to field as many players. So, yeah, I think you've absolutely nailed it there.
Yeah. So just think about that. You can have too much of a good thing. It's about balancing your team with players from different sides, and naturally that happens if you're just picking players based on quality of scores and value prospect. And last one here, B, keep it simple. Don't overplan it. Obviously, look, we will release a free buy planner, and there's other ones available on the market, and they're just more for a little bit of visualization. I wouldn't sit there meticulously studying it. Just have a little bit of a rough idea that, okay, maybe there's one round where I might need to pay a little bit of attention to later in, but otherwise, just pick those players, because naturally what we tend to find is that if you're just picking the players that have good opportunities, usually those good opportunities exist at different teams each time, so you have a diverse set of players from different sides. Usually you're going to have good numbers without even thinking about buy planning.
Yeah, that's it. And there's paralysis by analysis as well. Generally, in these kind of cases, there's so much content out there. We're all pretty well thinking the same thing. And generally, the first option you think of is the best option. So, keep it simple. Don't overplan. Trust your gut. And have fun with it.
And that is what we're going to sign off with, B. The main thing when you're playing NRL Fantasy, and the reason we do these podcasts, is because we have fun playing the game. And I know that sounds very under sixes, everyone gets a trophy participation, but we wouldn't play B if we didn't have fun playing the game throughout the season.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's why we do it. And I mean, even the year that I had the great year a couple of years ago, I was still having fun by the end. I didn't care if I finished top 10, top 100, whatever, because I'd had fun the entire year. So just keep on doing that. That's the adage. Be nice to people in the groups. Just help other people have fun with it as well.
Yep, that's it. And speaking of helping people have fun, we'll have a little project for you on YouTube not too long after this releases, so stay tuned for that. But that'll wrap it up for Talking League Short's first ever YouTube video. Thank you very much for joining us. At this point, I believe I'm meant to say like and subscribe, so if you could do those 2 things, that would mean an awful lot to us. But really appreciate you tuning in for this entire episode. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you in the next one. But it's bye for now.